It had broken during a recent move to a more prominent position on campus. My dad wanted me to kind of lay low around campus for a few days. Living with a guy like that made writing horrors and thrillers a lot easier. It just kind of sits there like a carjacker's wet dream. It's time to learn about the wild week of Campus MovieFest and my fears around intellectual property ownership. If you're an up-and-coming creative or anyone dealing with IP issues, pay attention to this one. Today's lesson: when you're starting out, exposure can matter more than ownership. October 24th was the start of a week-long student film competition at Whittier College called Campus MovieFest, or CMF for short. This event takes place at colleges all over the United States, and I obviously wanted to be involved, although I hesitated at the idea of trying to make a film from start to finish in just 1 week, on top of being a full-time college student. It didn't help that day one of that week was the same day I shot the Measure J documentary interviews from the last episode, and only 2 days after Lion had gotten kicked out of the dorms, like I talked about in Season 3, Episode 10. However, 2 of the original A-Type 5 were at this college, and we'd made a couple new friends. The friend I tutored, who I mentioned in Season 3, Episode 8, and her friend Diana Solis was required to submit a film to CMF for a class she was taking. So when they asked us to help them make a short film, how could we say no? Although when we signed up, I chose to use my own computer and camera instead of the camcorder and laptop they offered to rent us, so that I could stick with equipment I was more comfortable with. The friend I tutored and I had French class with Lion 3 days a week, and his behavior was still weighing on us quite a bit. So we kind of channeled that into making a crime drama, a murder mystery film we decided to name Pink Hat. After lunch, we shot the first scene in the Rose Garden that day, showing a couple walking while the wife wore a pink hat, and a woman in the distance waved flirtatiously. We got it shot in only 15 minutes, but I had to say goodbye at that point because that was when Nick picked me up to shoot the Metro Tower interviews for the Measure J documentary. But that night, after I got back to campus and had eaten dinner, we shot another scene of Pink Hat in an old rundown study room we'd found. Remember, we only had 1 week to write, shoot, and edit this film, so we started around 10:30 p.m., but in an hour, we'd managed to get an interrogation scene recorded in which Colin's character admitted that he'd murdered his wife due to jealousy. Fun fact, Diana and their friend group actually showed me what Instagram was and encouraged me to make one. I did, but unfortunately I wouldn't actually start using it until I was a junior, so I ended up having to play catch up compared to other more social media active people. However, I'm really thankful they had me make one when they did, because I was able to get my real name as my Instagram handle before someone else claimed it. Anyway, the next day, October 25th, my parents actually came down to visit me so I could stay with them in a motel room they'd gotten nearby. I had told them about the situation with the roommate and that Lion was still attending classes at Whittier, so my dad wanted me to kind of lay low around campus for a few days, just to make sure nothing else was going to happen. The day after that, I shot Scene 3 with Colin and Diana in about an hour, and we got closer to a finished product as the time constraints tightened. I'd never had to shoot a scene in which a character beat someone to death before, but we managed to make it look decent without making it gory or obscene. I used the natural lighting and white backdrop of the building to kind of get Colin's silhouette for the shots, which I think added to the murder mystery vibe and meant we didn't need excessive blood or special effects makeup to make it look kind of realistic. We even shot a bit where Diana's character came back as a zombie because we weren't 100% sure how we wanted the film to end yet. Fun fact 2. That evening, my Office of Communications coworker, Christina Gonzalez, and I shot footage for the 100th birthday of The Rock, a literal boulder that was repainted several times per week to promote different groups on campus, a tradition that apparently had started all the way back in 1912. It had broken during a recent move to a more prominent position on campus, which made a lot of people really unhappy. But that reconstruction process actually made it taller than before, so I think it kind of worked out in the end. In case you weren't already aware that I was wrapped up in Halloween spirit and frightening things, I went to see the movie 7 Psychopaths with a man named Klamer. The closest theater showing the movie was all the way out in Pasadena, though, so he drove us out there in his convertible. The retractable roof had gotten stuck, though, so he made the joke that it's not really a convertible since it doesn't convert. It just kind of sits there like a carjacker's wet dream. It was my first time ever seeing Pasadena, so I was grateful both that he introduced me to the area and that I could see the film. So we started to become friends, and Klamer would go on to act in a few of my films. But I'll talk more about him in a later episode. By Halloween, we were ready to submit the final cut of Pink Hat to Campus MovieFest, until we learned that CMF would own the rights to anything we submitted. That kind of made me uncomfortable, so instead, we turned in a slightly rougher cut of the film and decided to spend more time making a better film afterwards, since we already wanted to change the ending so there wouldn't be zombies. Later that night, I walked to an old graveyard called Broadway Cemetery that had been turned into Founders Memorial Park. I didn't come up with this idea by myself, though. I had a group of friends that I spent a lot of time with, the ALN crew from Season 3, Episode 8 and 9. One of them had suggested we go on this outing, and we ended up dancing on the old grave sites. There's definitely something a little ironic about dancing to "I'm different, yeah, I'm different," while standing 6 feet above a skeleton. I think the older we get, the more we start to respect death, but I wasn't old enough just yet. But I would be soon. Now, when Pink Hat premiered the next evening, November 1st, we didn't get in trouble for submitting this rougher cut because our friend just had to submit a film. She didn't have to win an award or have a groundbreaking story. She got the credit she needed and everything was fine. In fact, I think it was a little cathartic to get ideas about death and murderers out of our heads and into something creative. This film definitely felt a little creepier than what I'd usually make, given what had just happened with Lion. You know, there's no doubt that my experiences have been part of the reason this film was written with the tone and feeling that it did. Living with a guy like that made writing horrors and thrillers a lot easier. However, about 3,000 people have seen the real film we made, and about 6,000 people have seen the trailer for it. But I wonder if that would have been higher if we'd submitted the final cut to the festival and had potentially won an award or something. Getting your work in front of people can be very difficult, so when the opportunity comes up, you've got to take advantage of it. Luckily, Campus MovieFest did allow me to meet a lot of the filmmakers on Whittier College campus, especially through the film group VPS, which I mentioned back in Season 3, Episode 4. For example, VPS is where I met Michael Anda, who's probably the filmmaker I looked up to the most when I was a freshman meeting the existing members of VPS. And if I remember correctly, Michael and I got along partially because outside of film, we both listened to Lil Wayne and played video games, and I ended up getting to play some of The Last of Us Part 1 over at his apartment because he had a PS3. But the big takeaway from this episode is that even though I didn't fully own what I made for CMF or the Office of Communications, I proved that I could consistently shoot, edit, and deliver a final product under pressure. Just like how the activity fair from Season 3, Episode 6 gave me an opportunity to show people that I was ready to work, Campus MovieFest gave me an opportunity to get that work in front of others, and I should have made that the best work possible. Storytime! There are a lot of sexually frustrated people in college, and one of those people was a teacher's assistant. At one point outside of class, she brought up to some of the students that she was looking to have sex. And so they recommended one of the single guys they knew, someone from a different class so it wouldn't be too awkward. It wasn't his teacher's assistant. He was a friend of mine, so I put in a good word too, and eventually they met up. However, when I asked him how it went, this is what he told me. Well, we met up in her dorm room. It was awkward. We talked for a bit, and then we started making out and getting naked. She was damn good at giving head. A real corn on the cob situation, if you know what I mean. Shout out to 3-6 Mafia. Sure. But then she got on top of me and we had sex. But at one point she stopped right in the middle of it, looked right at me and said, "I feel like a Chihuahua." Were you in doggy style? No, that's what made it so weird. I have no idea why she would say that. So what did you do? Well, I just kind of let out a bark. Went back to thrusting. I didn't know what to do. Have you hooked up again? Oh, we haven't spoken since. And they never did again. But you'll have to tune in next week to find out how a fraternity ruined a day of production on Carpe Diem.
So tell me what happened.
I don't know what you're talking about, officer. I went to dinner. I had dinner with my wife. I went home and I went to sleep.
Don't play smart with me.
Play dumb.
Look, you killed your wife, And then you hit the body. Where is it?
I didn't move it!
Story time. Make it good.
I killed her. I killed her and it felt right. We were going to the park, because we've been drifting apart. We were doing